So I am going to spend a minute talking about the future of trucking. And this is going to be a fairly fast, I'm going to move through these slides fairly fast as I'm going to try to get us back on time. And I have a lot of content, so I'm going to try to go through it fast. I will have time at the end for questions, so feel free to spend a minute writing down your questions. So I'm going to talk about what's happening today, what the hauling demands are, and what the 2020 regulations and legislation are. There are a number of regulations that are coming in 2020 that is going to impact what we do from a logistics perspective across the industry. Also going to talk about how we can prepare, what kind of things can we do from an efficiency perspective, what ag technology is coming in, and then talk about driver versus driverless. Even Bart likes wine grapes. As an overall industry, there's almost 600,000 acres of wine grapes across the state, 90% of the wine grapes being in the Central Valley. 4 million tons, roughly, plus or minus a few hundred thousand, which equals about 170,000 loads. If we look at a peak day when the whites and reds are crossing, it's about 3,100 loads that we would be moving as an industry at peak. For me, it's about a 16-week harvest. And if we took all those loads as an industry, it's about 7 million miles. And so when I'm looking at the hauling demands, I'm trying to figure out across the state, where are the hot spots going to be? No pun intended with the fire issues up here. But seriously looking at the challenges and obstacles that we need to look across the wine industry, and what can we do to prepare and be efficient as we're trying to move all of the wine grapes that the industry is producing. When we start talking about 2020 regulations and legislation, there's a regulation that we refer to as CARB, California Air Resource Board. And the CARB legislation is around the engine year models. And this regulation rears its ugly head again in 2020. It was imposed for 2010 that all engines across the industry will be 2010 engines as of 2023, with the next wave of retired engines occurring this year. So the 96, 99 engines will retire. Traditionally, where do those engines sit? In the ag industry. So this isn't necessarily a wine grape issue, it's an ag industry issue, and we're all competing for these older trucks to ensure lower rates. And this is just gonna create some challenges. When I look at my fleet, I have a fleet of about 650 trucks that we bring on. About 25% of them sit in this category. Next year, the next wave of engines will retire, and then by 2023, all 2010 engines will be in production and newer. It's not all gloom and doom here, because we believe the 2010 engines from the large carriers will start to come used on the market. So we can start to find affordable used engines that we can bring into the ag industry. But this is definitely a regulation that we've been monitoring and watching and trying to prepare our carriers to be able to retire their trucks and onboard the newer engines. What it states here is you can run an older engine with a PM filter. A PM filter is a particulate matter filter, which essentially is put on the engine and reduces the carbon particulates that's emitted into the air. A PM filter was not designed to be put on an older engine, which has created issues. So these older engines are on the market with this filter, and this particular engine blew up and melted literally in 10 minutes because of the PM filter. So we are monitoring and understand that that the current fleet is at risk. We do see, this was the first engine we had seen leave the market this way in our fleet, but we also had a 2014 engine do the exact same thing. So the engines run harder to reduce the carbon particulates, and that creates issues with the equipment. We also were affected by the piecemeal pay. Those of you who are in the vineyards and are paying on a piecemeal pay rates, we didn't realize on the trucking side that it affected us also. And it affects us because we pay by the load. And that's partly to continue to monitor and measure our rates. And so we had to make sure that we included breaks, lunches, the wait time at the vineyard and at the wineries. So piecemeal was definitely affected the trucking industry as well. And 2020 electronic log will be implemented. Electronic log, manual logs today is the way the industry has been for many years as the industry was established. Electronic log is a probe that goes into the engine and measures idle time, drive time, and downtime. So we lose flexibility that the manual logs provided, and electronic logs will monitor the hour engine run times. All this note says here is that what used to take to go across country a day, 2.5 days, will now take 3 days. So it's going to take longer and more. We're going to have the same amount of loads with the requirement of more drivers. The hours of service also changed for requirements on drivers. And all this is saying is what used to be a 12-hour day that the driver can drive was reduced to an 11-hour. What used to be a 16-hour consecutive day was reduced to 14 hours. Breaks and lunches, just as you are required to monitor breaks within the first 5 hours of a workday, truck drivers are also being monitored that way, and electronic log will require that drivers attest to taking those breaks. And then the 60, 70-hour limit, what this is stating is what used to be, you can drive 6, 7 days in a row, and you would only need 10 hours off between work weeks. What this is saying is now you need 34 hours off between work weeks. And so it's all important because it's for the safety of the folks that are on the road and those who are driving, and so we understand the regulations being imposed, but it does create challenges as we're trying to move fruit that needs to move from the vineyard to the winery in a very short time, so it's real time to get processed. So a couple constraints that we're working in. We also have the regulation AB5. That's the newest regulation that is, you might have heard it as Dymatex. It's the Uber UPS regulation that essentially was passed along party lines here in California that says that if you're a contractor, you are doing similar work than what the company's main responsibility is, then you're an employee. And so you have an ABC test, and if you can't pass the ABC test, then you need to be converted to an employee. And this affects trucking because of my fleet of 650 drivers, 75% of them are owner-operators or independent contractors. And so this is a huge deal on the trucking side. The big news last week was a judge did, the CTA, the California Trucking Association, put a restraining order on this regulation. The judge did accept the restraining order and is going to hear this and make a judgment on this. We are very hopeful that we will see trucking become exempt, but there are several folks who were exempt, and you can see the lawyers, ER doctors, commercial fishermen, and a few truckers in the construction industry. So ag is not going to be carved out separately, but we are working very closely with CTA to help the whole industry hopefully be carved out of AB5. If it's not carved out, this will wreak a whole bunch of havoc on the entire industry. This is going to be a tough one, and we're watching it very, very closely. So what are we doing? There's a couple things that, especially because a majority of my volume is in the valley, and we'll talk about what we can do here on the North Coast, is looking around, how can we be more efficient with our trucks? We're going to have less drivers. We know that. There's going to be constraints around labor and electronic log. So currently what we have found is in the vineyard, we start and stop. In trucking starts and stops, and the processors start and stop. And so as we spent some time working with our processors and our vineyards, we started talking about what is it that we can do to make the entire supply chain more efficient. And some of the things that we've done in our big wineries and our large sites in the valley is we implemented something called drop programs, where we would bring in a full trailer of grapes, sit it at the winery, and the driver would be able to leave with an empty trailer to go back to the vineyard, and then we would shuttle grapes into the winery so that essentially it allows the entire supply chain to be efficient. So we're going to continue to look at ways that we can work up here in a small lot perspective in a more efficient manner so that we can ensure our trucks continue to move, we can ensure our processors continue to process, and we can ensure that grapes get off the vine in the most efficient way and people aren't having to wait and the waste gets driven out of the whole system. One of the things that we did in 2016 was we put GPS on all of our trailers. And this is some animation from 2019 on all the loads that we moved across the industry. And you can see the date up here. I just think it's fun and cool to see, so I'm watching it just for fun. But we can move on. So saying all of this, we know that there was going to be a driver shortage. This is across the nation. The blue line is the number of trucks that we're going to have, or that we have currently today. We're right here now in 2020. And we know that the green line is the number of trucks that we need, or drivers that we're going to need to move all of our material across the country. There's a gap in what we have and what we need. But more importantly, we actually aren't filling the seats in the blue line. So as our Vietnam vets and our baby boomers are retiring, the millennials are not backfilling those seats. So not only do we have a gap in the need of drivers, but we have a gap in the current, how do we replace the current folks that are leaving the industry? And so that leads us to the discussions around driver versus driverless. And do we actually see that there's going to be enough drivers, especially here in ag, where it's a seasonal business. And if you have 6 weeks or 16 weeks to try and find a driver who wants to move our product, it's going to be even more challenging than what we've had in past years. So what we've seen across social media as an example, there are folks advertising lawsuits. If you're being paid by the mile, the load, or a flat rate, that might be illegal. Contact us. We have trucking companies advertising on social media now. We have trucks that are advertising. We have signs. You probably have seen most of this is from the Valley. But even our manufacturers, this is Foster Farms that's saying, come be a truck driver, you can make $60,000 a year. And it's not just ag hauling, it's also tanker hauling and other types of trucks. This is one of our house carriers that has a billboard on 99 that is looking for truck drivers. This is Frito-Lay that says you can go make $72,000 a year to be a truck driver working for them. They're advertising on the back of a pickup truck for tomatoes, and they have commercials. This is the first time we've actually seen a commercial run during a sporting event saying, come work in ag. Ag is cool. Ag's amazing. You can be home every night. There's a woman in the truck. And they even have webinars on how to effectively recruit and retain female truck drivers. And then this year was the first time I've seen a billboard with women on the billboard to say, come be an ag driver. So there's a need. We're looking for different avenues to recruit women, to recruit people to come be truck drivers. And so it's here, it's real, and we're going to continue to figure out how we can fill the gap so that we can move your fruit. Next, we're going to move into the Uberization of the trucking industry. There are many boards out there today. Uber has really taken over the opportunity. Oh, that's my timer to remind me. I'm close. What this allows is drivers to be paid in real time. They can go decide, okay, I have time to go pick up a load. I'll go pick up a load. And as soon as that load is delivered, they're paid. And so this is very attractive to drivers, especially in those areas of metropolitan, San Francisco, LA as an example. And so we're seeing more and more wineries even asking if we haul on Uber boards, which today we don't. And so it's something for us to continue to explore. Can ag move into some sort of Uberization? This is Tesla, who says that they have a self-driving truck. It's in production currently, and it will penetrate the market by 2025. And so the challenge with this is you still have to have a driver in the truck. And so I'm not sure what the point is at this time, because if you have to have a driver in the truck, then there's different regulations that they're looking at. They're trying to federally, they're looking at, do you have to have a driver drive, and you only have driverless truck on the freeway, so you have to have a driver drive the truck from your point A to the freeway, and then they're talking about opening up one lane for driverless trucks, and then it has to go to the final destination after it gets off of the freeway. It has to be drivered. So the regulations are still being defined. They're not fully vetted yet, but it is here. What I'm struggling with today is how I figure out and can we have driverless trucks in ag. And most of our vineyards don't have addresses. They have GPS coordinates. And so it's one of those things, can we feed GPS coordinates to a driverless truck that will then pick up the trailer, pick up the load and deliver? It's all very interesting and potentially automated as 5G continues to come on. I'm not seeing 5G out in any of the vineyards that I've been at this year. And then the last piece is we just continue to look at, it's not just Tesla, it's Mercedes as well, and other folks are really looking at what we can do from automation. So with that, I would love to open it up for questions. Fun stuff. Thanks, you guys. Appreciate your time.